So today we're going to work on the beginning of our quick series here, working with a 3D model in Photoshop. As I had mentioned in one of my vlogs that is, this is going to be a kind of a start to finish series. We're not going to just take a pre-existing model and import it into Photoshop. We're gonna make an actual sculpture, and for that we use what's called Super Sculpey. Or at least this is what I use and what a buddy of mine uses, who will be in the series a little bit later. We use this, and along with our fun array of sculpting tools, which a lot of times I rely on my fingers themselves. As you guys can see, I have a various size of fingernails. Again, something wife doesn't like, but just been that way my whole life, and they help with sculpting. So we're going to start with this is a different box that my kids had apparently gotten into and made what looks to be a snail mass grave. I don't know. Either way, the reason I'm going to use this is if you've ever used Sculpey, it's kind of like Play-Doh in the sense that it's pliable, but it starts out tough, and you have to really work it to get it nice and soft. So since these have already been kind of messed with, we'll say, it should be easier to kind of mend them to be what we want. I don't have all the materials that I would normally use, so I scrounged up a couple of things. Here's some what looks to be solder or just plain wire. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's just wire. I may or may not use that. I also have this kind of tough paper bowl. The reason I bring this up is I don't want to make a solid model. I kind of want just the outside of it. I want it kind of hollow. At least for this instance, especially if we were going to cook this. Cooking a solid model, it's probably not a wise idea, but not a very good. You don't always get a good outcome. And I'll warn you right now, this video is going to be kind of chopped up. I don't want you guys to have to watch me sculpt an entire piece. I'd like to do a halfway decent job on it. So to do so, we'll kind of cut it up so that you get the most important parts. I'm not really teaching you how to sculpt as much as just kind of letting you in on some of the action. Right now I'm just kind of messing with the Sculpey to get it kind of into a ball, kill the snail graveyard that my kids made, and kind of get this to the kind of I don't know, form I'd like it in. I want to be able to mold it. But we're going to make a face, and it'll be a scary face, as I mentioned in my vlog. My buddy Andy and I, we're both sculptors. He's the one who's got the mechanical ends of this, the 3D printer and 3D scanner. We both have kind of a similar style, which is just plain weird. Or the fact that we have a similar style is not plain weird. Our style is just weird stuff. So we're going to make a weird, creepy face, which is what I'm best at. And to do so, I'm going to kind of cut, and use an X-Acto knife and kind of cut into this. And I'm going to use this for kind of the forehead-ish, I don't know. I'm kind of making this up as I go. So I'm going to cut this out. It doesn't need to be very accurate. I can kind of be more specific with it later. I use scissors, but my kids seem to have found a better home for them, and I can't find them. Let's go ahead and rip that. So now we have this here, and I'm just going to start ripping because this is paper and it's even, you know, it's just easier. I kind of want to, like I said, I'm making this up as I go. Doesn't need to be perfect. Just kind of a quarter of the plate here. And probably do some mending of these corners. So this is where we're at. We have our piece of paper plate. It's kind of be our, for the life of me I can't think of the term, and it'll come to me later, I know, but basically the piece that goes underneath our sculpture. And then I have some Sculpey that I've kind of tenderized, we'll call. Actually, that's probably the right word. And again, this just came from a regular old paper bowl. It's a little bit tougher than a normal paper bowl, that's why I chose it. Sometimes I use wire and kind of wrap around a, man, I wish this term would come back to me, but anybody who knows anything about sculpting or art in general would know what I'm talking about, the kind of the armature, that's the word I'm looking for, I believe. Which is kind of what's going to go underneath. But today I'm not going to use that, and usually I use a thicker gauge. I just found this out in the garage. And usually instead of a paper plate, I would use tinfoil or something like that. If I was going to bake this, I would definitely not use a paper plate. Big disclaimer here, if you guys get into sculpting from this video, do not buy Super Sculpey and sculpt around a paper plate and then bake it. That would be a very, no offense, just plain dumb idea. And to even things out, I'll tell you that when I was in college, so when I was introduced to Sculpey, I was taking an art theory, or kind of just a general art class, and I had a project due, and I went ahead and thought, well, I'll toss my sculpture in the oven and bake it while I'm waiting, and or while I'm getting ready for class. And that would have been a good idea because it was about the right time I needed to bake it. But being brilliant, I went ahead and forgot about it and went to class. And we ended up with a burnt sculpture, which the sculpture actually came out cool. It made the sculpture like just black as night, which I thought was pretty cool. However, the smell and smoke in the apartment was not cool. And this would be the guy that survived that awful scenario there, skull looking thing, which I don't know how well you can see that because of how black it is. And again, this was probably the second piece I'd ever made. I'd never really gotten into sculpting, so I thought this was a pretty good job for just getting into it, and that's kind of how my sculpting hobby came to be. Ended up making pieces like this that would hang on a wall. Didn't quite do a very good job with baking in the mount, which I now realize I should have done a different way. I shouldn't have baked it in. I should have made it so this was mountable and then put the mount on the wall or something. But that gives you an idea of some of the things that I've done, or at least I was back in college. Now I make scarier things that I paint, and which I'll admit I'm not a very good painter with this stuff. I just like to make creepy shit. So moving along, I'm going to take this kind of mashed up piece of Sculpey here, kind of lay over a paper plate, And I'm going to do a magic time thing and skip ahead until after I've wrapped this thing all the way around. Alright, so I've got the clay pretty well wrapped around the plate. And if I haven't mentioned it before, the reason why I'm not baking this is I'm just going to reuse this Sculpey. The whole point is to take this piece, we're not going to bake it, we're going to sculpt it out, and then we're going to scan it in with a 3D scanner, which you'll learn more about in a future video. So let me go ahead and I'm really just using the paper plate as a base and a shape. We're going to kind of mend that now that we have the Sculpey to help us with that. And I kind of want to get it to a point where more of a face shape here. And I'm going to do, this will be the base of it. Then I'm going to take some of these pieces here that I've kind of mashed up, and I'm going to kind of, I don't know if this is the right term, I'll be honest, after that first class that I took for general art, I never did a sculpting class afterwards, so forgive my misuse of terms, but what I generally call this is kind of grafting in, and I'm going to kind of just take this pointed thing here, this pointed tool, which I'm sure has a name, and just make some lines in here. And what this is going to end up being is a nose. And I could be totally off base here on my thinking, but what I'm going to do is kind of work this in, and I feel like I use these little holes here, these kind of slices, to kind of help squeeze in and hopefully help the piece that I'm applying to kind of become part of the original base. And that would normally be more important if we were sculpting, or we were burning this. Sorry, not burning. If we were cooking this, because that would really determine whether the nose ends up falling off or stays part of the piece. So for this circumstance, I'm not going to put a lot of effort into it. I'm just going to kind of shape this into somewhat of a nose form, and we can make it fancier later. But now we have what appears to be somewhat of a nose. And I'm going to do kind of the same thing for maybe some eyebrows. And I'm going to do the magic jump ahead again to save time, so you guys don't have to watch me do this whole thing. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the nose, only with the eyebrows. And I'm just going to grab these two pieces that are about the same size, and we'll graft them in. Alright, now we're back, and I've done my grafting of the eyebrow into the piece, and they're subtle, which means I got the effect I wanted. I don't want to have some the more protruding they are, the less realistic, I would imagine. So a lot of the work comes into smoothing out the areas where these pieces weren't actually connected before, and there's still some work to be done on there, which I end up using certain tools to accomplish the smoothing out, which appears my kids may have found their way into my sculpting tools, and I'm missing some of the things that I would use. Usually I'd use a rounded wood tool, which I'm going to go ahead and use this one instead, which might not work the way I want, but just some subtle pushes and pulls, and we'll get some of the imperfections out, and I'll do that a little later. This thing kind of just showed up, and this actually is more the shape that I was looking for here, so I'm going to go ahead and use this. And I'm really just rolling really softly, just to kind of smooth out imperfections. And the biggest reason for this, other than just plain making the piece look nicer, is that imperfections are going to show up in the scan, and it's the kind of the difference between you making a scan that not only looks good but doesn't need a lot of attention once it's been scanned in. Not everything comes in perfect. All these imperfections need to be, like, the scanner has to figure out what to do with all these imperfections, and sometimes it ends up being a mess, and we don't want that. So I'm going to do another magic skip ahead here as I graft on some sort of lips. May just do lips. I don't think we're going to do any teeth today. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll see when I bring the video back in. So I'm going to cut in a little bit halfway through what I was working on here and just show I've got kind of an upper lip coming in here. Still haven't figured out whether I'm going to do anything crazy with it or just make it a lip with a lower lip. But I'm going to just cut in for a second, and when we get back we'll have more of a finished mouth. And I'm going to cut in again. I came up with an idea that I'm going to try, and that is to, I'm going to put some teeth in there. So I'm making some similar sized little balls here of Sculpey, and I really have no idea what these are going to end up looking like, but each of them are going to end up looking like this piece here, which kind of resembles a tooth if you pulled it out. The reason for the flat top is I'm going to kind of try to wedge it up under the lip, and since we're not baking this again, I can kind of do this a little sloppy as far as getting these in here. I put a little more effort into if I was going to bake it because I don't want them to fall out or anything, but again, this is for scanning purposes. So again, we'll be back with a little more in a second. Alright, and we're back a little bit here. I've got the teeth kind of, I'd say, for lack of better words, smashed up in that upper lip. So as you can see, we are starting to form a kind of strange person face thing. I don't even think I'm going to make a lower lip. If I do, it's just going to be very subtle. It'll just add to the weird of it. The only thing left we really need to do, and I may have actually probably could have done this before I did the eyebrows, but some sort of eye, something that resembles eyes. They're just going to be bulges, because that brings me to kind of the whole point of this. Me showing you this is that we're going to take this simple object here that I haven't painted, I haven't baked, I haven't even put a whole lot of effort into, and we're going to scan it in, and then we're going to use Photoshop to paint it, basically. Which, for someone like me who's not a very good painter, in the traditional sense, this gives me the ability to take sculpting, which I'm a little better at, and paint them within a world that I'm much more comfortable with, like Photoshop. So I'm going to just kind of gauge out how big these need to be, and just kind of place them in there. They're almost like the teeth. I don't even know, since we're just scanning this, if I need to put a lot of effort into grafting them in. I just kind of need to place them in there, and then in a way that they'll stay for at least the time it takes for me to get over to Andy's house and for us to mess with his scanner. Yeah, even that's too big. The eyes I want to be pretty subtle. Okay, instead I'm going to start with more of a round shape. And just kind of smush it out to the form that I want. Utilize some of these tools here to kind of push. I'm not even sure where I got this tool from. It's got some embossed label here, which really sucked if I was using that end. Excuse the children running upstairs. I'm going to take the round end and kind of just slightly kind of wiggle and push at the same time, kind of smoothing things out. Just enough to get this more of a bulge coming out here. We can push the eyebrow down into it, give it a little character. I'm going to push up a little bit underneath, from underneath, to give it a lower brow, which I may have done my little grafting technique if this was a more serious piece. So we've got one eye in there. Let's go ahead and we'll do the magic time jump, and I'll put the other eye in there. Alright, so now I've got another eye in there. It's not as perfect as I would like it. I'm going to spend a little more time kind of cleaning this piece up and putting a little more detail into it, and then just let it sit until we go to Andy's. I keep saying that like we're going to magically appear at Andy's, but that'll be another day when I head over there and we film over there. But it'll be definitely worth watching. And then anybody who wants to kind of cheat and skip ahead can find the video where we've already gotten the model scanned in, and we're working on it in Photoshop. So because that is the main purpose here. But I wanted to give people an opportunity to kind of see what is available out there for people who do like to sculpt and are, you know, real sculptors. I might say I'm a sculptor, or I might say I sculpt, but I do it for fun. I do it to pass time and to make creepy things to sit in my basement and scare my kids with. But other than that, jury's out on whether I'm actually be considered a sculpture, I guess, a sculptor. So we'll leave it at this, and in the next video, which should be over at our pal Andy's house, I might have modified this piece a little bit better and worked out some of the detail a little better, but it should resemble this to some degree. We'll work on things like any if you can see imperfections in the clay itself. We want to smooth anything out as possible. You'd really want to do that anyway, but this really does show up on the scan. Things like this here in the nose, where it's kind of chunky, I don't know what to call it, but not smooth. That would come out very kind of in the scan, and we don't want to do that. So anyway, that's the end of this video, which may or may not be 2 videos, I don't know yet, until I get to the editing. Thanks a lot, and soon we'll be painting on this creepy looking thing. So, alright, bye.